And now a reading from Mark 3rd chapter 31 to 34. Then his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside they sent to him and called him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, "Your mother and your brothers and sisters are outside asking for you." And he replied, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking at those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people. Thanks be to God."
Thank you.
This morning we heard the story where Jesus was in a very controversial position. He was speaking to the crowd, and he was talking about a house divided, and he was being just as Jesus always was. And all of a sudden, his family arrived. And what is important is that Jesus was a magnet to the crowds. And the crowds followed him everywhere. And what he was doing, it didn't make sense to any of his family members. And so, his family was concerned, and they were saying, "What's happening? What are you doing?" So they arrived while he was, speaking some very harsh words in the verses before the ones we considered this morning. And someone told Jesus, "Your mother and your brothers are here. Your family's here." But it's important to note that they were there because they thought that Jesus was out of his mind. They thought that he had gone crazy. So they went to get him, to retrieve him and see what was happening. And Jesus says to the announcement that his family was there, Who are my brothers and my mother and my sister? Who are they? Who's my family?" And in the account in the book of Matthew, it says that he pointed out to his disciples and he said, "They are my mother and my sisters and my brother. They are my family." And this morning, I thought this scripture was particularly important for you both to share with us, right? Because you're allies to the Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands people. And I wanted to begin by the very basic question of, why did you go to St. Thomas?
Well, I think you, Reverend Damaris, made a call to action months ago through our fearless leader, Jenny, who is the head of the Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands Ministry, and were telling us, I don't remember at that point, there had been how many days with no electricity and no water and no nothing. And for me, I'm not quite sure how to label things, but maybe the Holy Spirit, maybe something. I literally had a physical, feeling in my chest that I just had to do something. That's really the only way I can describe it. I didn't decide. I just had to. I felt it here. I still feel it here. And that's sort of what happened for me. It was just, okay. And it wasn't deciding to go to St. Thomas. It was, I'm talking to Jenny, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it? And that's how it started for me.
Yeah, basically the same thing with me. Is once you gave the call for action, and it was time to act. So then Steph and I can talk just by looking at each other. So she turned and looked at me.
She's my sister.
She turned and gave me a look, and I said, "Okay, I know." So at this point, we jumped on it as soon as Jenny was like, "Hey, let's start a mission." All right, let's do it.
And we had been already to Puerto Rico. You had been, I think, a couple of times at that point, and we had no one from our congregation be on the ground in St. Thomas. And we had spoken with Chanel, but it's sort of, hard to really get an idea of what people needed, what was happening. And so we wanted to go there and sort of be all of your eyes and sort of see and assess, help for the short time that we were there, but really go to see how all of us can help more. And we felt like we needed to be there in person to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And when you were there, who were those people that touched you the most? I mean, you share some stories with me, but I would like you to share it with all of us. What were those moments that made you realize I was meant to be here for this work right now?
For me, that was when we went to work with my brother's workshop. That group specifically works with at-risk youth, female, male, old folks that were there that still do not have a diploma, and some of them, school's not a big thing for them there, so they just kind of do their own thing, and they get into a little bit of trouble because there's not really any jobs on the island itself. Like you kind of have to know somebody to be in a job. So these guys come and they work with my brother's workshop. They make sure that they get a diploma when they walk out of there and they finish their program. And then from there, then they can get their jobs that they want. And it also gives them a sense of helping the community. Now, when the hurricane happened itself, a lot of people were left with nothing. And my brother's workshop literally sustained no damage during both hurricanes. St. Thomas had two Category 5 hurricanes hit the island a week and a half apart from each other. And thank God, they sustained no damage. So everybody that was a part of my brother's workshop helped everyone in the community dig dirt out of their houses, rebuild their cisterns, build a staircase. There was a couple, the lady was crippled, the husband was blind. Now, I don't know who's been to St. Thomas, but all the houses are built on a cliff. Mm-hmm. So you either have to go down a deep cliff to your house or you have to climb up. And this couple's staircase was completely knocked out. They were climbing up the cliff on a rope. So you have a crippled lady and a blind man trying to climb up to the rope.
Elderly also.
Pardon?
Elderly.
Yeah, elderly, yes, elderly. And my brother's workshop came in with their crew and built them a brand new staircase. Every single member that was a part of my brother's workshop has pictures and memories, and they feel amazing that they were able to help somebody else. Regardless of what their situation was at home, they still got to help somebody else. So I actually encourage everybody when we leave here to go look up my brother's workshop and just see everything that they've got going right now. Because it's mainly hurricane rebuilding, helping everybody on the island. Like Puerto Rico, they don't really have a great government system, to say the least. So.
Yeah, the people that Lisa is talking about at my brother's workshop, they're not only at-risk youth, they're adult mental health, not patients, but people who have mental health problems. And so the people that we're talking about are kids who've been expelled from every single school on the island. So there was no other option for them to do anything. And the older folks have mental problems, and nobody else has anything for them. They just sort of forgotten them. They're the people that were forgotten. So this organization came in and, we were there doing physical labor. You saw the mess and the whatever. So like that was important, and that's what we were doing. But besides the physical labor, we were talking to these kids, these high school kids and these adults, just about conversation. And what Lisa was sort of alluding to is like, besides the act of making a staircase over the course of a month for this elderly couple, we got to talk with the people about the sense of pride that they got from doing that. And so it was really incredible to see this organization that was doing good and building X, Y, and Z, but just the impact they were having on these people's lives. And these people who were going to go home to no home or go back to the gang that they're currently in, like really at-risk people, were showing us the pride of what they did for these other people. So they were really transforming these people besides just what was happening on the island. So there were so many layers of that particular organization that we were really lucky to be involved with.
And you had also shared with me a little bit about the impact of seeing, their work in terms of the impact on the youth and the impact on its immediate community. And I had asked Lisa and Stephanie, what about the children? Where are the children? What is happening with them?
Yeah, I mean, we honestly didn't really have much interaction with children when we were there, just because we were only there for 4 days. It was a very short time, and we were on job sites that were either, for adults or just with the two of us painting stuff. And so we didn't get the opportunity to ask those questions. We saw a lot of pictures, and we spoke with some other volunteers that had been there before, and we heard stories about the St. Thomas Reformed Church, where Chanel now works and who hosted us, really became a beacon in the community right after the hurricane. And there were stories of people getting in fights on the church steps outside, like physical fights.
Over diapers.
Because
formula.
They wanted food for their babies and diapers for their babies. And so that's more about the mothers, because we're talking about young children, but it's that animal instinct that they didn't know if they were going to be able to feed their child the next day. So they wanted to, they felt such this sense of desperation and urgency. They wanted to do all they could right at that moment. And so we heard a lot of stories about that and sort of saw how they dealt with that, and then tried to talk with the community about, what do you need today? We're going to be here for you tomorrow. What can you do with today so we can share with the rest of our brothers and sisters who need this today? Mm-hmm. And we can all do this together, and we'll all be here for each other tomorrow, which is a really nice message, not only about who are your brothers and your mothers, mm-hmm. but it's really, in these crisis situations, is what can I take, what little amount can I take to sustain myself today so that I can help sustain everyone else, my family, my brothers and my sisters and my mothers around me. And that sort of had to happen through this chaos there, because St. Thomas doesn't produce anything. They don't even grow mangoes or anything like that. They have to get everything imported. So the real sense of desperation was really there for everyone, and still is.
And so I hear you, and I always, Stephanie and I have talked recently a lot about the ministry that, by the way, it started from the people of Fort Washington, because I didn't ask anyone to start a ministry, right? You guys got together, and Jenny and Peter and both of you and Jay got together and said, we will be the Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands ministry. And as a UCC minister, that to me is so powerful, because the people, right, it's not from the top down, it's from the ground up. The people said, we will do this. And, often we talk a little bit about, we don't speak Spanish, or, we don't, or going to St. Thomas, they are not island women, or Jay is not an island man. So
we're a couple of white girls. I'm like, Damaris, I can't go to Puerto Rico. I don't even speak Spanish. Who am I? Who am I?
Our ally.
That's what Damaris said, which I didn't even think about. Because who am I to do any of this?
There is such power in allyship. I think that we don't understand that. I think the concept of who's my mother and who is my brother is lost on us when we don't find, that place where we say, I don't understand your issues, so I'm going to go this way because those are your issues, right? This is about people in St. Thomas and Puerto Ricans, so that's their issues. But the power of being an ally, it brings the issue to places that it will not reach without them, without your voices. It will not reach the levels of importance and attention if our allies were not walking with us. And that is on every issue. It's on healthcare, it's on housing, it's on every issue. And, when we look at those words, where do we see our mother, our brothers, our sisters? We shouldn't say, well, this is who I am, and I don't see my face in the face of that person, so that cannot be my mother, my brother, or my sister. It should be that feeling that Lisa and Stephanie shared earlier, about what is shaking my body, what is shaking my spirit, that I must do something about this. And that discernment of is the Spirit of God moving me into places that are unknown to me.
Yes. Yes.
And so, they left, what we say in Spanish, su tierra y su parentela, their land and their family. Yeah. To go to a place they had not been before, and to serve a people that were not their people. And so my question this morning to all of us is, who is our mother, our sisters, and our brothers? In the United Church of Christ, the word resistance is at the beginning of our journey. It starts with our vows of baptism. Do you resist evil and greed? That is the first words that are told to someone who is at the baptismal font. So that whole resistance is in our DNA, as it is in the DNA of Fort Washington Collegiate Church. And do you think that this action of leaving behind your families, your jobs, your responsibilities, in your opinion, did you see that as perhaps a step of resistance of what is expected of you?
You can ask my husband, because he had to stay with the kids. No, I mean, it's our responsibility. I don't know. Like I said before, for me, there's not like a real, this is not out of a textbook about why we're doing this. It's just there's a need and we have to do it. I don't know what I'm doing and how to do it, but thank God we have each other and we have this community who supports us, and we make it possible for us to do these sort of things. And, Lisa and I are both very handy. We have saws and drills and can do all of these things. So we're like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll come and do whatever you want. And for me, I have Charlie, who's 5 and graduating kindergarten, and Adeline just turned 3. And, they need to know that we need to go help our brothers and our sisters in St. Thomas. And they need to know that there's a crisis in Puerto Rico. What can we do to help? And it doesn't matter if we don't have millions of dollars. We can give our time and we can give our talents. And they know that, and that's going to be normal for them. And for me, it's very important that we show that to our children, which is why this mission trip, the youth mission trip coming up, is so important. Because I didn't grow up that way. My family is lovely and all of that, but it was more, it kind of reminds me of Jesus' family, right? You're crazy. What are you doing? Help your own family. And that's also important. So it's a challenging thing to try to find the balance, because obviously we need to help our own families and we need to have food and shelter for our own families, but we need to be able to go beyond that, and I think it's really important that we show that to each other and support each other in doing that.
We're fortunate for what we have here. We have electricity, we have water, we have our families. The people of St. Thomas and the people of Puerto Rico still has no power. So we need to help. They are U.S. citizens, along with the U.S. Virgin Islands. Everyone's a U.S. citizen. That's what we do. We're helping our brothers, our sisters, and our mothers.
And for me this week, I just want to say, I think that some of you read my e-blast, and if you haven't, I suggest that you do. Yes. I felt that, hence is why I'm wearing my rainbow stole. For me, I feel that my mother and my brothers and my sisters is the LGBTQIA community. Because if they are denied service, I will not accept service. If they are discriminated against, I am discriminated against. If they are marginalized, we will stand with them on the margins, but we will stand together. All God's children deserve to eat cake and buy it wherever they want to get it from.
That's right.
And that is, it's so interesting how this discrimination and hate finds ways of presenting themselves through technicalities and through, this wasn't really about, same-sex marriage. It was about a technicality on the way the Colorado Commission, Civil Rights Commission conducted their proceedings. So when you read the decision and you read what the judges wrote about the decision, when you finish, you're like, oh yes, this really wasn't about. But that was the element that allowed hate to find a footing. And until we don't name it, we will continue to be blind and given smoke screens, and people are appealing to our intellect, right? Because we love, what does the facts say? Because that's the first thing I said. Give me that decision. Let's print it out, right? And let's read it word by word. Friends, sometimes the church needs to get a keen eye, and I don't know why my head is in Spanish this morning, but una lupa, a magnifying glass, right? To see through it. That is our job. And through the smoke and the print and all of that, we need to be saying, who are our brothers in here, and who are our sisters, and where is my mother? Mm-hmm. And if they're invisible, if they are hurting, then we say, you are, and we stand with them.
That's right.
Absolutely. And that is what you did.
That's right.
And we thank you for your service and for your ministry.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.